So what I want to circle back into once again, I'm not going to leave this because it's so important. Look, we talked about this last week, Genesis 3:15. That, in my opinion, that scripture, in my opinion, sets up the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. I mean, it just does. And unless we come to a full understanding of the Genesis 3:15 narrative, when we get to other passages, we don't know. There's no grid system for us to process those other passages. So Genesis 3:15 simply states this, and the the motif or whatever in the garden, you've got a pre-incarnate Christ, the dragon, the serpent, and then over here you got Adam and Eve. And the pre-incarnate Christ says this to the dragon: your seed, your offspring will be at war and enmity with the offspring of the woman. The offspring coming from the woman, he will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. That sets up the rest of the biblical narrative. And unless we come to terms with that and understand what it really means when we get to, and I've talked about this numerous times, but I have to say it again, why new people come here. And I'm setting up what I'm going to talk about today by talking about Genesis 3:15. The serpent, the seed of the serpent, the offspring of the serpent versus the offspring of the woman. Now, that's not taught in many seminaries. In fact, people rail against it and insist that that can't possibly happen. Yet the early church fathers believed in it. The Jewish rabbis believed in it. And it's there. The historical record, it's there. Read Josephus, where he talks about the Nephilim, the giants that were in the land when Israel conquered it thousands of years ago. Look, this narrative is that important, which is why in some ways I've kind of trying to reshape the show into something which I think fits my wheelhouse maybe a little bit better for at least YouTube and some other platforms. So with that in mind, we know that there's going to be someone coming from the seed, the offspring of the woman, which is going to crush the dragon's head. Dragon doesn't like that. 3 chapters later, Genesis 6, right? The sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and took women, took wives from whoever they chose, and it's multiple. That's why in our newest book, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood, it's really an important read. Some people say it's the most important book I've ever written. I don't know. I can't possibly be the judge, but I'll tell you this. It took me over 2 years to write it, and talk to my editor, Sonda Allison. It was like yanking teeth. Very difficult book to write. So here's the deal. Who is the prince of the power of the air? 3 chapters later, the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. When the sons of God took wives, had sex with the women, and the offspring became a Nephilim. And I'm not going to get into that today of how they returned. And I'm not trying to plug the book, although it'd be great if you bought it. But I will get into that at some point because it's very germane to our discussion here. So going back to this is the serpent mound, all right? It's in Ohio. It's the largest serpent that undulates over the landscape on the planet. Now, when I was there, I had just come back from Peru, seeing all these megaliths and just being astounded by them, specifically Sacsayhuamano, Tintabo, other places. And I'm here looking at this going, well, I don't get this. And I didn't get it until I saw this clip. And I'm going to show it to you right now. So we can see that we're flying the drone over the great serpent mound. Who is the prince of the power of the air? And why is it that you really can't see, you don't even understand what you're looking at until you're high above it? Now, the drone there is probably about 60, 70 feet up. Watch what happens when I pop the drone further up and you really get a bird's eye view and you can see the entire undulation of the serpent. Another shot of it right there. And once again, when you see these pathways, like right here, there's an asphalt pathway, and on the other side. So when you're walking on that and you read the signage, you don't understand. Well, what am I looking at here? This makes no sense. Now watch what happens when we pop the drone up. On this crisp winter's day, there's the tower right there. It's about 2 stories up, so you can get an idea of what you're looking at. Now, see, now we're starting to climb up, And you can now start to see what we're looking at here. The scope of this entire, it's the first real shot. You can see the tail, coil, and then the serpent undulates over this little peninsula that sticks out over this creek, this river right here. Even a better shot of it. Who is the prince of the power of the air? And why is it that you can only appreciate what you're looking at when you're high above it? When you're down on the ground, this makes no sense at all. And here's something else. How would you check your work? How would you check your work? How would you know that this thing is what you want it to be? I want to circle back to this here and show you this shot. And I'm just going to stop and pause here. Look right above. The serpent's mouth is wide open in the act of swallowing an egg. Now, New Agers insist that the serpent noun is, the serpent denotes wisdom, and it's giving birth to wisdom in the form of an egg. First of all, serpents don't birth anything through their mouth, number one. Number two, this hails back, in my opinion, to Genesis 3:15. This is a totally different paradigm, a totally different look at what the serpent noun is. Why is it? And how would you construct something like this where we know that the coils of the serpent correspond to the equinoxes and the solstices right there? How would you check your work unless you're high above it? Well, it could have built 3-story towers out of logs. Okay, I get that. They could have done that. But even then, when you're only up, 30, 40 feet in the air, you don't get the full Monty. You don't really understand what it is that's on the Ohio landscape. And once again, I'll go here and just right to there where the drone pulls up. And then you can really start to see what it is you're looking at. In my opinion, this screams Genesis 3:15. This is what we're looking at. What is it doing in Ohio? What is it doing in Ohio? Chief Joseph had an interesting remark on this, a speculative conjecture on his part. He believes that this undulating serpent at one point in time could have been dressed with mica. So this whole mica would shine, would reflect the sunlight. So this must have been the shining one, Nakash. And hats off to Dr. Mike Kaiser, who brought that to the forefront many, many years ago. But other commentators have talked about Nakash, but it was really Heiser in modernity, in the present day, that brought that to light to the body of Christ. Bully for him. So here's the bottom line. If that's true, can you imagine how this thing must have looked with the sunlight reflecting the shining one, Nakash? So all that's incredibly interesting. In my opinion, Native Americans did not engage in this. They did not build it. The Shawnee Chief Joseph Wallace said on the record that the Shawnee didn't build the serpent mound. Then she flip-flopped. So which is it? Here's the deal. And today this is a quote from the Smithsonian. And I talked about this last week. But again, if Native Americans didn't do this, then who is the prince of the power of the air? There is a hidden history which has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. I'm going to read you the quote now. Today, the Smithsonian Institution spokesman may not agree for politically correct reasons, but after the study of its researchers a century ago, so more than 100 years ago, when they started looking at this, they realized something was up. It didn't fit the narrative of Native Americans. And so they said this. These people over 100 years ago concluded that a civilization of higher order than Native American were responsible for the ancient copper mining and the building of what we see in the great serpent mound here. Who is the prince of the power of the air? In my opinion, this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. Is that conjecture? It would be conjecture, except site after site after site that we see paint a completely different picture of what we are told. I'll say it again and close this section by stating this. There is a hidden history which has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. This is why we are on the trail of the Nephilim. For those of you just joining us, Rendlesham Forest happened in England. That's where it is. There was a military base there, a joint military base, U.S. personnel and UK personnel. And this guy had an encounter. Other people were with him. They had an encounter. A craft landed. He saw an entity appear. All sorts of high strangeness happened. So let's pick it up from there.
And that flew from Germany onto Badwaters airfield, not Woodbridge, Badwaters. And it was handed to the pilot. Canopy closed, and the plane took off.
Now, what he's talking about here is they had film of the UFO, and it was handed to the pilot, and it wound up in Washington. Let's continue. So our government knows about this. They knew about it back then.
And Mike Verano asked, where's Clay Guffin? They said to Germany. What we also know at some point has been lost in time is that footage was flown to Washington, D.C. after it was in Germany. A lot of our command people showed up and did witness all this, so I pass a lie detector on it.
A polygraph test is very accurate. Yeah. So, and also the other thing about this, Larry, is it can't tell the difference between a big lie and a little lie. So even if you lie a little bit, you'll still get the same film result. So that's why I always say to people, if there's anything you need to tell me that isn't truthful in this, tell me now, because otherwise you will fail, even on a little lie.
Fine. So it's amazing. They're showing the lie detector test. This is really cool.
Okay, ready to go do it?
So they hook them all up. And she begins to ask the questions. A reenactment of what this man saw. And so let's move on from there. The bottom line is he passes the lie detector test. What he saw, he's telling the truth. Now, how many witnesses like this do we have to bring forward? How many people, this is why we made our film, Disclosure, UFO Disclosure, The Coming Great Deception of Luciferian Again. This came up over the weekend. This was filmed in China. This huge light object, you can see it here, give you an idea. This is more of a close-up of it. But look at this. I mean, this is high strangeness. We don't even know what this is. I mean, I can't even get my head around it. Look, I'm going to go into prophecy here. The biblical prophetic narrative states that the dragon will come with all signs and lying wonders. Is this a lying wonder? Is this some sort of a sign? I don't know. I don't know what it is that they're looking at here. I do know this, that we're seeing more and more high strangeness as the days go by. And the fact that the Pentagon is admitting vehicles not made on this earth, pray tell, where are they made? More importantly, who are making it? Prophecy, written thousands of years ago, stated by none other than our Lord and Savior, Jesus, for those of you who are Christians and watching this. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Something is coming which will be so overwhelming, it will deceive the masses, even the elect, if that were possible, which is why we do this every day, because I truly believe that these are not friendly ETs from Zeta Reticuli. Why do I say that? Cattle mutilations. And maybe we'll get into cattle mutilations here. Look at the abduction phenomena. Look at the implant phenomena. All these are related directly to UFOs, directly. Think about Betty and Barney Hill, who were abducted. They were terrified. They were terrified. Think about Al Matthews, the centerpiece of our film, UFO Disclosure. Al was abducted numerous times. He had an encounter with a hybrid woman that totally changed his life. Folks, UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. I would admonish you, please, download the film. Watch the film. It's free. There's so much information in that film. It's imperative that you watch it. So I want to get into this because it's just amazing. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. You're looking at a shot of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Look at the megalithic stones. And we're going to talk not about this, but I'm just whetting your appetite. But something is going on here that has been swept under the rug, as it were. And I want to discuss the very enigmatic and mysterious towers at a place called Sillustani. But before I get into that, here's the announcement. Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural will no longer be on this channel on YouTube. You'll have to go to BitChute, Rumble, or Roku to find it. That's the full Monty. where I can actually speak my mind without any censorship. But we want to play the game here, which is why we're just doing On the Trail of a Nephilim. And there's all 7 of them. You can avail yourself by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net. Rent them all. But let's get into this. This is one of the enigmatic towers at Sillustani. No one knows who built them. This is basalt. Notice, first of all, if you were going to build anything, you'd build it in a square, especially in the ancient world. Why? When you build anything in the round, it's like 10 times more complex. Not only is it in the round, but notice that notice the tower is smaller on the bottom and then gets gradually wider as it goes up. You've got to know geometry to do that. You really do. And you have to have, whoever did this had stone cutting skills that were just unbelievable. Now, the white that you see here is archaeologists, modern day archaeologists, has come in and sort of tried to preserve the towers. Many of them have collapsed with all the earthquakes. But there's something going on with this. And of course, immediately, oh, these were used for funerary purposes. Oh, really? We don't think so. This is basalt. It's got piezoelectric power. In other words, it can conduct electricity. Notice, here's a normal human being, 5'6" woman, right? And she was on a tour with us when we were down there. And notice how tiny she is. Notice the entrance way down here and this whole structure that goes up like this. What were these things? Who made them and why? And they're in a high place on the border of Peru and Bolivia, very close. And when you go there, I mean, I just remember I was just completely blown away by what I was looking at and scratched my head and wondered why. Okay, I'm a woodworker. I'm building all the doors here and cabinets here on our rebuild, and which is why I haven't been able to get to episode 8 on the Trail of a Nephilim series, but I digress. So here's the deal. When you build something in the round out of wood, and I've got bandsaws and jigsaws and all sorts of stuff, if I'm just going to do an arched door, you know, I've got to know geometry. I have to find center points. It's a whole complex deal. I've got to take the wood, which is all straight, and make curves and then sand all that. It's very complex, extremely time-consuming. Well, wait a second. This is basalt. This is basalt. And on a Mohs hardness scale, diamond is a 10, let's say. So you're looking at a 6 to 7. How is this cut with copper chisels? Well, it's not. Not only that, how did they create this round structure? So get this. Every inch that you go up in the tower, every inch, the radius is changing. That radius around the tower is changing. Look how perfect it is. Look how precise. And if it wasn't enough, look at this up on top here. It's like, let's make it as complex as we can. Whoever did this built it because they could build it, and they did it easily. They weren't struggling. They weren't trying to figure out, well, how does this work? But whoever built this took the machinery and the tools with them. It's astounding. There's also something that we see in places like the sun gate, so-called sun gate. You'll look at right here, these little protuberances that come out of the stone. So there's a lot of conjecture. Is that where the machine melts the rock? We don't know. It's all conjecture. But we see these little protuberances coming out of the stone, not only here in Sillustani, but in other places. And it makes us wonder, it's the same builders, there's no doubt about that. Look at the joinery here. Take a look at the joinery. It's perfect. It's perfect. No one knows who built these towers. Now, modern day archaeologists insist that it was the indigenous people, blah, 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 blah. But check this out. Here on the right-hand side are the Inca, right way over there. Look at the stone wall. Look on the left-hand side. You'll also notice the little protuberances coming out of the rock right along here. See that? I have to look at the monitor so I can see where I'm pointing to. Look at the stones, the way they're cut. Absolutely perfect. And I show this actually in Lost Civilizations. There's a whole clip, and the lighting was just perfect. We got there at sunset, so the lighting is coming through the doorway, and it's lighting it all up. It was just amazing. The sunlight was coming through, and it was this golden aura surrounded us. It was really an amazing shot. And you'll look down through the gate. They call it the gateway to the Sacred Valley, but no one knows what they really called it. To the right way over here, is what I affectionately call Inca slop. Look at the difference in stonework. They are two different builders. There's no doubt about that. Completely different in every way, shape, and form. So on the left-hand side, we see stones that are cut very similar to what we see at Sillustani, and they are placed with absolute precision. And on the right, we have indigenous stones, basically head size, stacked up. And look, the stonework is really good. I'm not knocking it. I'd love to have a wall like that in my house around my property. Who wouldn't, right? It's great stonework. But look at the stonework on the left. There's a disparity between the builders. And we don't know who actually built this. We know the Inca did the one on the right, but we have no idea who built the one on the left. There is a hidden history. Something happened. And it's not ancient aliens, which is why I call this fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. Conjecture on my part, maybe, but we are looking at something which would be hard to duplicate in modernity. Certainly the Sillustani towers, could you do it in modernity? Yeah, but we've got computers and cranes. We have knowledge of geometry and trigonometry, which is what you would need to construct a tower like this. You're just not going to go, I think if we just kind of draw a circle on the ground and then somehow we put some sticks up like this so we can do the cone, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Whoever did this knew geometry, probably trigonometry, and they had machines that were able to cut the stones. Absolutely incredible. So once again, today I want to talk about ancient megalithic structures, Nephilim architecture. Before I do, if you want to catch our full show, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural Report, we're basically doing 2 shows. I'm really excited about this. A little more work for me, but what the heck? I love what I'm doing here in the new set. It's really cool. And I'll be bringing you all sorts of stories from stuff that never gets into the film, lots of pictures that never gets into any of our films, but I digress. If you want to see our full Monty, Politics, Prophecy, Supernatural Report, you've got to go to Rumble, Roku, or BitChute. And we are going to get a new monitor for the back here at some point, so you'll be able to see some of the pictures that we're showing. Anyway, once again, on the Trail of the Nephilim series, you can download all of them, all 7 of them, by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Shameless plug, moving right along. I want to talk about this site, Sillustani. It's right on Lake Puno, near Lake Titicaca, right on the border of Peru and Bolivia. Just a very high place, really bizarre. And Sillustani is a pre-Incan cemetery on the shores of Lake Umayo, near Puno in Peru. The tombs, which are built above ground in tower-like structures called chupas, are the vestiges of the Kula people, who are Aymara, conquered by the Inca Empire in the 15th century. Okay, let's just stop right there. That's the official narrative. I get it, the official narrative. Everything's always a tomb or it's ceremonial. If I have a big guy like this right behind me, right, the huge giant there, and I talked to Derek Gilbert about that, and of course, Derek knows exactly who this is. But, that's just, hyperbole. They really weren't that big, really. So it's the same thing here. They call these things tombs, but as we will see today, in my opinion, these are not tombs. Let's move on. Welcome to Sillustani. I was there in 2014 with our guys, Brian Forrester and his lovely wife, Irene. Chase Klotsky was there and some other folk. It was great. A lot of this footage that we filmed never got into any of the Watchers films, and I really haven't used it. These are still shots that I took with my trusty camera, and I will show you why, in my opinion, this was not built by the Amaya Indians and has nothing to do with the Inca. It's something else. It is, in my opinion, a lost civilization. Check this out. How does an island like this get a flat top right there? If you can see that, how does it get this flat top right there? How does that happen? I remember sitting there looking at this, and Brian Forrester and I both just went, look at all the surrounding mountains all around this thing. Everything is typical topography, up and down, up and down. And yet when we look at this island in the middle of this lake, flat top. How is that possible? Did they bring bulldozers over and do it? And if so, why? And this is why it drives me nuts. You know, we go to a situation like this, we go to a site like this, and we spend a few hours at Sillustani, basically the whole day. But that's, you scratch the surface. And there's so much more. I could spend weeks there combing the area. And of course, having archaeologists with us and anthropologists with us and maybe some stonemasons and whatever, because there's so much information that's locked on these sites. And the Peruvian government, with all due respect, really isn't doing very much in a site like this. So moving right along, this is the first site, the first shot that I saw. And you can see in the distance right here, it's kind of hard to look at. Maybe I'll send the JPEGs over to John Adam and he can put them up on the screen. But this is one of the towers. And notice here, it's in an angle. This tower, you'll see the rear of the tower as we move closer to it. Something happened, but I'm getting ahead of myself as usual. Look at the precise alignments of the stones. Look at the way they're just set absolutely perfectly. And again, we talked about this yesterday. Here's a perfect example. My coffee cup, narrower at the bottom and wider at the top. Folks, to do this, you need advanced geometry. You need to know trigonometry. And you would need to know the precise curvature of every single stone, because as you're going up, the radius changes. The radius changes. With every millimeter that you go up, the radius is changing. So you're making this perfect circle, this perfect tower in the background. And we have to ask ourselves, how was this done? It's basalt. Very hard, about 6 to 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. The Inca only have copper chisels. What are we looking at here? It's a mystery. It's enigmatic. In my opinion, it's a lost civilization. Who? Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. That's conjecture. But when you go to all these sites, it's the same thing. We're looking at high technology, which was used, and then somehow it just vanishes. Whoever the builders are, they take the tools with them. So this is what the Inca, who move into the area much, much later, this is their example of the tower. Is there a difference? A and B. You tell me. This is what I affectionately call Inca slop. Was it used as a funerary interment? More than likely. But this tower, in my opinion, was anything but a grave. Anything but. Did the Inca move in or the Maya Indians move in afterwards and use it for funerary purposes? More than likely they did, because they did find funerary bundles. But wait till you see this. So there's the Inca stuff. And when Chase Klosky was with us, that's her backpack in the back. Actually, I think it's mine. But Chase had all this equipment on her. I talked about this yesterday. And this is a circle that you can see. This is the base. So the stone tower is no longer there. All right. The tower, the stones have been carted away, what have you. But you can see right here at the base, very complex cutting. And when Chase moved into the center of this tower, which is actually right there, when she moved into the center of the tower, her batteries drained just like that. So she has all this gear with her, and all the batteries just completely drain as she moves into the center of this really bizarre circle. So this is the foundation, the footing. And here's what one of the towers looked like. The white marks are when the archaeologists came in and used mortar to shore up and make sure, because a lot of earthquakes in the area. So they went in and patched things up to keep the towers intact. But when you go there, there's really nobody on the site. And it's just absolutely amazing. It gives you an idea just how large the towers are. And once again, they're conical. Smaller at the bottom, wider at the top. Advanced geometry, advanced trigonometry. Inca didn't have that. The Maya Indians certainly didn't have it. So where did it come from? And if they did have it, why did they just forget about it? Oh, well, they built the towers. They just forgot that they had done so. We hear this over and over again. Not buying that explanation. This is the back side of the tower, and I'll show you once again. Here's the front side, and now here's the back side of the tower right there. Something incredibly cataclysmic has happened. You can see the stones in the foreground right here. The stones in the foreground. I feel like a weatherman. We have a front moving in from west to east. But right there, You can see the stones in front. It's almost like there's been an explosion that's happened that's just blasted this thing apart from the inside out. The white marks that you see, archaeologists have come in and they've shored the tower up by just pouring cement and shoring it up with rocks. And this is the way they fill the tower up so it won't topple. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just, with all due respect to Peruvian archaeologists, this is really bad form. So as we zone in further, notice, and this is a great shot because you can see the angle of the tower. What the heck are these carved out marks, carved out cavities in the stone? Why are they there? Who carved them out? What purpose do they serve? We don't know. If you're building, why are you building like this and then deliberately leaving out or carving out a section of the stone? Here's another shot of it. So if this is a funerary object, what do you need this for? Why does this stone have a hole in it? And what's that for? What is this for? Where there's like a basin, and on the other side of this lip here, what you could see, there was a hole connecting it to the hole right below. If this is funerary, why do you need that? Everything is built in stone, out of basalt. It's very, very hard. Inca has copper chisels. Look at the precision here. Look at the precision. Something else is going on here. Something else is happening, and we don't know what it is. We don't know what these towers were used for. In my opinion, and I've talked to electricians who've looked at this was some sort of a machine, some sort of a device, but we don't know what it was used for. We don't know the builders. We don't know anything about it. But to immediately go and call it, they were tombs, is absolute nonsense in my opinion. So once again, on the left here, you see the builders' extraordinary stonework, the joints imperceptible, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you call what I affectionately call Inca slop. With all due respect to the Inca, before you start having a cow over there. LA's making fun of the Inca. Well, it's inferior stonework. Would I love to have that wall in my yard? Oh, you betcha. Would I pay a handsome price for it? Absolutely. But if I had my choice, the one on the left or the one on the right, I'll take the one on the left any day. It's superior technology. And we were told this, that when the Smithsonian Institute, when they came in to places like the Serpent Mound and the Great Circle Mound and the Octagon Mound in Fort H, and they just scratched their heads and something else is going on here. Native Americans didn't do this. They knew that there was some sort of pre-existing culture which just vanished. Get the same thing down here. And I'll talk more about that these cultures, whoever is doing it, they just seem to disappear, and no one knows what happened to them. Lots of conjecture. Of course, I have my conjecture too. So you'll notice on the left here, these protuberances which come out of the stone, and then look at the Sillustani Tower. Is it the same builders? In my opinion, absolutely it's the same builders. Same type of stone techniques. And remember, look at the stonework. Look at the way it's absolutely fit with precision. You need advanced geometry to do something like this. And you know what? Thousands of years ago, they didn't have it. Anyway, folks, interested? I know I am, which is why we're on the trail of the Nephilim. You can download all 7 of them by going to streaming.lamarzulli.net. Download all 7, binge watch them. The Sillustani Towers is just one place that we've been. I'll probably talk more about that in tomorrow's show. Anyway, I want to get into our UFO segment and run that clip once again from Chase Klodsky, because I think you'll find it really interesting. With Pentagon UFO unit in the spotlight, report mentions off-road vehicles not made on the Earth. Let's just stop right there. Why would they tell us something like that? And where are the American people? Where are the pastors standing up and going, oh my gosh, look at this. This is Fox News. What are we going to do with this? Off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Do you realize what that means? Folks, let me explain something to you. What happened in antiquity, when we go here and we look at things like this, in my opinion, it is the same entities that are building all these artifacts that we see here. All of them, okay? They're building all these artifacts, building all these structures that we see. And now they're back and they're doing this. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Who is the one that controls the space above the earth? Who is the God of this world? Need I say more? So when we get to stories like this, report mentions off-world vehicles not made on this earth. Where were they made? Who's making them? In my opinion, it's the dragon's kingdom. And I realize there's guys out there on the other side of the fence, ancient alien. These are ancient astronauts from Zeta Reticuli. You don't know that. You don't know that. And contactees, when they ask them where are they from, they're always, say some name of some faraway planet or make up something. But in reality, we had no idea where these entities are from. Is our government in cahoots with them? You'd be the judge of that. This is Chase Klotsky. She had an encounter. Let's see what she has to say. Hopefully the sound will work.
Extremely, extremely overwhelming to have something like this right there, and there's nothing you could do to record it. All of a sudden, there was just this feeling, and I turned around and kind of asked everybody else in the field if they felt like they were being watched. And I said, and I don't mean from up there, I mean from down here. And before anyone could answer, and there was barely any time, there was this fear that just gripped. It was physical, LA. It like punches into you almost. It's just really hard to describe. Except
They're familiar with that feeling.
this.
Now, I say something here, and I want to talk about that. Chase is out in the field, and this object is flying over their heads, and she becomes terrified. It's visceral. It's fight or flight. And she said it's like punches you. It's overwhelming. I've experienced that. You know when I've experienced that? When I've been around demoniacs. Does this happen every day? Obviously, it does not. But when I'm around a demoniac, I remember, I'll never forget this, at this one church, and that church was exploding. I won't mention the names. I was a worship leader there, and it was beginning to get out of its, status quo. And some people really got that. Other people didn't really like that. But when it begins to happen, when the Lord begins to move, and healings were beginning to happen, and words of knowledge began to happen, and the people began to work together in the gifts of the Spirit. Some of you may not believe that, but that's another discussion for another time. The bottom line was, it will attract the demonic. Just like in Jesus' ministry, when we read the Bible, and demoniac shout out, what have you to do with us, the Son of the Most High God? Things like that. They'll create disturbances. So I'm leading worship, and this woman, obviously demon-possessed, comes dancing down the center aisle with the goofy smile. That's what I call it. It's when you're around a demoniac, not all of them do this. Some of them will snarl or growl or whatever, but they've got this little smile, and their eyes are really big. And I've seen that look before, and I know what it is. And when I went up to that person afterwards to try to pray and remove the thing from her, she didn't want it removed, number one. Number two, as I got close to her, bam, I got hit. So when Chase is talking about that, I know exactly what it is that she's talking about. Who is the prince of the power of the air? The kingdom of darkness. Let's move on.
Not fight or flight. This is times 1,000. This is every single cell in your body is very aware of a blind terror.
Stop right there. Every cell in your body is aware of a blind terror. So if these are such peaceful entities from Zeta Reticuli, why is it that we hear this over and over and over again from contactees? Now listen, not every contactee will say this. Some contactees say, oh, I was just filled with joy and awe and wonder and peace and bliss. I get that. They have the ability to mess with us on our emotions, and they can appear as angels of light. Why is it that Chase comes away with this experience? Because she's dealing with something very dark, very sinister, extremely nefarious, in my opinion.
My equipment, I literally dropped my repair measures how many cells you don't
How many thousands?
So you leave your equipment in the field.
Yes,
So you are generally terrified.
absolutely. The witness was in front of me, and all of a sudden he stops. He moved a flashlight, and never so shocked in my life, because standing 6 feet away was this little being about 3.5 foot tall. And
So it's sort of a typical gray, although it doesn't have the huge eyes. They were almond-shaped. There seems to be different species of these things. The legs were very spindly. It moved very robot-like. You know, folks, are these avatars? In my opinion, they are avatars. They're not. They're biological constructs made by the dragon's kingdom to house the demons. Let me explain. Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim who perished in the flood and also afterwards. Read our book, Countermove. So they need something to inhabit, whether it's a person, a doll, an object, a herd of pigs where Jesus cast them out. They need something to inhabit. They do. And the Book of Enoch tells us that demons are earthbound and they hate people. I mean, they absolutely hate us. And so a demon-possessed person has taken this entity. They are not fallen angels. That's a whole different deal. So the dragon's kingdom knows that it's got all these disembodied spirits running around. It needs something with to have that demon spirit possessed. So it creates this avatar. You know, the problem is most of us have a very truncated view of the supernatural. So when we get into this stuff, it's like, LA, that's just so far out. Really? Really? What about when Jesus is taken up to a high place? How does that happen? And shown in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And then the fallen cherub goes, this all can be yours if you fall down and worship me. How is that possible? Is that space-time displacement? Did the enemy, the dragon, move him from one locale to another locale? It seems that he did. How did he do that? Lots of food for thought. No one ever talks about that. Then they go from there to the temple, to a high place on the temple, and the dragon goes, you know, throw yourself down. Angels will come and do that. And I get that. It's written in Scripture, Psalm 91. I understand that. He will command his angels to guard you in all your ways, lest you basically trip on a stone. And Jesus says, wait a minute here. You know, don't tempt your God with a foolish test like this. He's right. But how? The point being is, how does the dragon take our Lord and Savior from point A, this high place, over to the temple now? How is that possible? You tell me. Very, very interesting. They didn't walk there. They flew. Or maybe they bilocated. We don't know. And Scripture doesn't tell us. So there's two schools of thought. I won't mention any names. We can either not have any conjecture. Well, the Bible's silent on it, so we're not going to comment on it. Or we can put on our thinking caps and go, well, it could have happened like this, like this, like this. Is it conjecture? Absolutely. But what's wrong with thinking about it? There's nothing wrong with thinking about it. In fact, it opens the doors to what the supernatural world is all about. I am a frank supernaturalist. The supernatural is more real than what's around us right now. And we see it. The guidebook of the supernatural, i.e. our Bibles, tells us how to interface with this. So let's move on and see what Chase has to say.
I was so stunned. And the first thing that hit me was, oh my gosh, this is not that cute little Roswell alien. However, it was Bray. It did have the black eyes, but they weren't the real big, wrap around or almond, but they were almond shaped. The first thing I thought of after that was his legs were so tiny, twig-like. There it is right there. And it was the holy grail for ufologists.
Stop right there. You know, Chase is a world-renowned ufologist. She's appeared on all sorts of media, films, different shows, the whole 9 yards. And we spent a lot of time together with her. In fact, Mando Gonzalez and I went down with Richard Shaw and Chase Klotsky to Peru to collect the DNA samples, and we did that. So Chase has been, Chase knows what she's doing. And here she talks about the holy grail for ufologists. In other words, she's in contact with a gray. She's terrified, absolutely terrified.
Is this little being, but we weren't supposed to be there. We were not supposed to interact. We were not supposed to do anything to get out that corn.
What expression did it was?
Nothing.
Nothing? Did it gesture towards you in any way?
No.
Did it move towards you?
Nothing.
It just does.
And
You made eye contact with it.
yes, yeah,
What was that like?
terrified.
So she makes eye contact with this entity. And I ask her, you can hear me on the film, what was that like? She says, terrifying. Folks, UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. Jesus warns us even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Why would he say something like this to us? Why would he make a statement like that? You see, we gloss over this stuff, and it's happening right in front of our noses right now. Why? Because the Pentagon has admitted, and other branches of our government, that UFOs, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, are real. It's real. It's totally real. They're not denying it anymore. So it's out of the closet, literally. We need to do something about it. Talk to your pastor. You can watch the free film, UFO Disclosure. I say it every day. It's free. I'm not making anything off of this, okay? It's free. I can't do any more than that. I can't make you sit down and watch it, but you need to. Why? Because the information contained in that film is vital. What is coming is unprecedented. What is coming is actually already here, but when it's fully revealed, it will change everything. It will change everything. If you're interested in politics, prophecy, and the supernatural report, one more time, go to Rumble, BitChute, or Roku. That's the only place you'll find it. We're not doing that here. This is our new show. I love the new set. It's been here for quite some time. I built this set a while back, and I used it for episode 7, Lost Civilizations in the On the Trail of the Nephilim series. We'll be back tomorrow with more about Sillustani. In the meantime, folks, thanks so much for watching On the Trail of the Nephilim. Remember, we'll see you on the air or in the air.
My name is Alan Matthews. I've seen a UFO.
I've seen a UFO.
A UFO.